My name is Ray Whitmore. I'm a lieutenant colonel in the United States Air Force. Most of my work? Classified. But let's just say, when someone moved dirty money through the wrong channels, I usually found it first. I had just returned from deployment. Nothing fancy, nothing dramatic. Just a quiet ride home, a tired soldier with too many unanswered emails and an aching back. I missed my daughter Olivia more than anything. 13 now, smart as ever. I unpacked my duffel and went straight to check one thing, our college fund. It's what I promised Olivia since she was old enough to say MIT. Every month I contributed. It was sacred. But when I logged in, my blood went cold. $94,200 gone, every cent, withdrawn in one shot. I stared, refreshed the page, stared again. Then I checked the authorization trail. Dual signatory. Her name was right there, Raina Whitmore, my sister. I hadn't seen Raina in 6 months. Last I heard, she was living in a small studio in Las Vegas, barely affording rent, blaming her ex-husband, the economy, and karma for everything wrong in her life. So imagine my reaction when I opened her Instagram and saw a brand new caption. New view, new me. Finally earned it. The photo was taken from the 32nd floor of a luxury penthouse overlooking downtown. And that post? It went up 4 days after the money vanished. I sat down, couldn't move. Not from shock, but from rage so silent it could break bone. This wasn't just betrayal. It wasn't just reckless. It was theft. From a child, from my child. And Raina knew exactly what that money meant. Olivia's future, Olivia's dreams. Olivia's one shot at freedom. While I was deployed, my sister stole my daughter's college fund to buy her dream penthouse. I was shattered. But 3 days later, my 13-year-old smirked and said something I'll never forget. Mom, don't worry. What she stole only had surface value. And 2 days after that, Raina called me, screaming. I didn't tell Olivia right away. I didn't have to. The next morning, while I was slicing apples for her lunch, she slid her iPad across the table. It displayed a login trail, our account activity, traced, time-stamped, and logged with fallback IP mapping. I blinked. She looked up and said calmly, she used a VPN, but I tracked the fallback IP from the secondary authentication node. That's my girl. My 13-year-old daughter had reverse-traced Raina's login pattern through a misconfigured VPN. Not bad for someone who still sleeps with a nightlight. I smiled. More proud than furious. She added, Don't worry, Mom. She thinks she stole something valuable, but she didn't take the most important thing. And that was the moment I knew we weren't going to scream. We were going to act. I submitted the full digital log to JAG, Judge Advocate General's office, along with documentation proving dual signature authorization wasn't consented. No criminal charge yet. Just a quiet red flag on Raina's financial activity. We waited. 3 days passed. Then Raina called. Her voice was shaking. Ray. I don't know what's going on. Someone's freezing my assets. I'm being locked out of my own accounts. Ray, please, I'm scared. I didn't say anything. Didn't have to. Because that was when I realized justice had begun. And I wasn't the only one moving in silence. Olivia? She had already set things in motion. Earlier that morning, she'd filed a report with the bank's fraud division. Not under her name, under mine. With legal backing, with digital receipts. With a full timeline built in her coding software. My daughter was 13, but mentally, she was built like a strategist. Sharp, measured, unapologetically methodical. I always thought I'd be the one protecting her. But that day, watching her calmly sip juice while freezing a woman out of a penthouse she stole, I realized something else. This wasn't just about revenge. This was about restoration. And Olivia had just begun her opening move. My name is Ray Whitmore, Lieutenant Colonel, United States Air Force. Most of my work classified, but I'll tell you this, when money moves through the wrong hands, I'm usually the one who finds out how and where. I've tracked covert funding through black market crypto wallets. I've shut down supply chains masquerading as veteran charities. I've testified behind closed doors. I've watched powerful men sweat through their uniforms when I presented clean, irrefutable digital evidence. But this time, I was blindsided. Not by a foreign agent, not by a rogue contractor, by my sister, Raina. She was the last person I'd ever suspect. The one who used to sneak me candy bars after Mom grounded me. The same girl who braided my hair the day before I shipped off to basic. After her divorce, Raina had nowhere to go. I let her stay in my guest room, not for a week. For nearly 2 years. She cried on my shoulder after losing her job. She left dishes in my sink, borrowed my sweaters, hugged my daughter like her own. She told me she was starting over. I believed her. She said she'd changed. I believed that too. But maybe that's the danger with family. You don't see the con when it comes in a familiar face. She saw everything I had, the structure, the routine, the salary. She watched me build that college fund, every deposit, every milestone. And while I was deployed, trusting her to help with Olivia, she walked into that account, quietly, and took it all. No confrontation, no warning, just a digital signature and a whisper to her realtor. And poof, my daughter's future turned into her skyline view. I tried to replay the signs I might have missed. There was the day she asked if Olivia's fund could be accessed in emergencies. She phrased it like curiosity. I brushed it off. Then a week before my flight out, she offered to help consolidate my accounts for easier tracking. She sat beside me with a coffee and watched me log in. That was the moment, wasn't it? She didn't need to know my password. She just needed to see which bank. I taught national security ethics. I failed to apply them in my own kitchen. I remember the last call I made to Olivia before flying back. She said, "Auntie Raina's been redecorating her room. She says maybe she's manifesting a new life." I laughed. But Raina wasn't manifesting. She was planning. And I wasn't the only one she fooled. Even Olivia trusted her. They used to read comics together on the couch. Raina taught her how to bake banana bread. She told Olivia that family is your forever. Turns out, forever ends at $94,000. But this wasn't just about money. It was about being used. It was the betrayal of having someone look you in the eye and lie without blinking. The thing is, when you work in financial counterintelligence, you don't react loud. You don't chase, you document. You build the case, one log at a time. And when you're done, you let the weight of truth do what fists never could. I didn't block Raina's number. I didn't warn her. I didn't even confront her. Because I knew something she didn't. This wasn't going to be about revenge. This was going to be about education. For her, for Olivia, and for me. We were about to learn just how far silent justice could reach. After deployment, my body's used to silence, long silences. It's how you listen for what matters. So I sat there, in my living room, breathing quietly while the storm in my chest brewed without a sound. I studied Raina's posts, one by one. The caption of the Penthouse photo said, "Earned every inch." The comments were flooded with congratulations, strangers calling her a self-made woman, praising her glow-up. If only they knew. There was another post, a champagne flute in her hand, the skyline behind her glowing orange from the sunset. Her caption read, "Manifesting peace, finally." And there I was, sitting on the floor, manifesting restraint. I thought about calling her right then. I even typed the message, but I deleted it. Because words wouldn't do justice. And Raina never cared much for words anyway. She listened when things affected her directly, and I knew, deep down, that something bigger than words was coming for her. Something methodical, calculated, and unstoppable. Because when the woman you stole from is a counterintelligence officer with nothing left to lose, you don't get warnings, you get consequences, and they were coming, quietly. I used to believe that if someone had tasted rock bottom, they'd never rob someone else of hope. I was wrong. Raina knew what it felt like to be broke, humiliated, uncertain. I was the one who sat next to her on the floor when her divorce papers arrived. I helped her sort the bills. I made the calls she was too afraid to make. I gave her more than shelter, I gave her dignity. So when I handed her co-signing access to Olivia's college fund, I didn't flinch. It wasn't just a matter of convenience while I was deployed. It was trust. Simple, unguarded trust. No contract, no contingency, no firewall, just faith, in blood. I remember the night I signed that co-access form. Raina brought wine. Olivia had fallen asleep on the couch after watching a documentary about the Mars rover. Raina looked at me, glass in hand, and said, "You always take care of everyone. Let someone take care of you for once." Maybe I needed to hear that. Maybe I wanted to believe she still saw me as more than a uniform. So I nodded. I clicked submit. And just like that, I gave her the keys to everything I'd worked for on Olivia's behalf. Looking back, the betrayal wasn't just the money. It was that she saw the open door and walked through it without ever turning back. I kept replaying the memory of that night, like somehow I'd see a red flag. But all I saw was her smile, software familiar, and deadly. In military training, they teach us to trust patterns, not people. Look for inconsistencies. Map behavior, calculate risk. But in family, you don't map. You remember, and memory lies. I thought of Olivia, 13, sharp as a tack, always questioning systems. She once asked why the government doesn't use AI to stop fraud faster. That morning after I found the fund empty, she was reading a financial crime blog over cereal. She looked up and said, "You always told me people's actions are just data points. Right, Mom?" I nodded. She said, "Maybe it's time to chart Reina's behavior like we would a suspect." That's when I realized I wasn't in this alone. Olivia wasn't just my daughter. She was turning into an analyst. And Reina didn't know it. We started simple, pulled IP logs, checked metadata, scraped realtor listings with timestamps. The Penthouse, bought in cash. Reina had transferred the funds to a shell account 2 days before I even landed in Kabul. I dug deeper, email headers, VPN leaks. One bounced packet linked to a Starbucks, 5 blocks from Olivia's school. That wasn't just a mistake. That was arrogance. The deeper I went, the more I uncovered. Reina hadn't only drained Olivia's fund. She used our family name to open a secondary line of credit, never intending to repay. Worse, she exploited my deployment status to forge authorization on an old insurance policy. This wasn't just theft, it was premeditated. And I'd handed her the tools. That night, I sat in my garage, engine off, laptop in lap, staring at the timeline we built. It was clinical, brutal, precise. And somewhere in that silence, I whispered, I did this. Because I had. I let love blind me. I taught Olivia to see the good in people and use that same lesson as my own excuse. Trust is powerful. Misused? It's a weapon. We kept going. We downloaded logs to encrypted drives, cataloged files. I coached Olivia through digital forensics like she was one of my cadets. At night, we sat on the kitchen floor, 2 laptops open, mugs of cocoa cold between us. It became our mission, not for revenge, but for reclaiming what was ours. That night, after Olivia went to bed, I opened one of Reina's old voicemails, one where she cried that nobody ever believed in her. I'd saved it once to remind me why I helped. Now, I listened and asked myself, did she cry or rehearse? That's what betrayal does. It doesn't just cut, it corrodes. You question your memories, your instincts, your worth. But I wasn't letting Reina rewrite our story. Not for Olivia, not for me. And certainly not without consequences. Every screenshot we saved felt like a small piece of justice returning home. Olivia started naming our folders like mission files. Operation Trust Fall was the one where we traced the wire transfers. She giggled at her own joke. I laughed too. It was the first time in days I felt like I could breathe again. And then came the email. A single message. No subject. From a burner address. But the body was clear. You don't know what you're doing. Stop before someone gets hurt. We were officially in deeper than I thought. I didn't call Reina. I didn't storm the penthouse or bang on her designer door. I opened my secure drive, selected every document we'd compiled, each forged signature, the shell accounts, the laundering paths, and started uploading. One to the SEC tip line, one to the IRS whistleblower form, another to a private investigator I'd used before on a counterintelligence case. I left no trace of who submitted it. Then I closed the laptop and turned to Olivia. I asked her, do you want me to take her to court and get everything back? Olivia didn't blink. She held my stare with the kind of calm I've only seen in officers twice her age. No, she said. I want her to know exactly what she did and live with it. Like I had to live thinking my future was gone. That was my daughter, 13 years old. and somehow wiser than most adults I'd deployed with. Before I even posed the question to Olivia, I sat alone in the living room with a mug of black tea untouched in my hand. Court would have been clean, efficient. My uniform came with certain privileges. I knew which attorney to call, which judge might see reason, but something about that path felt too clinical, too distant from the damage done. This wasn't just about dollars, it was about dignity, about the look in Olivia's eyes the day she realized someone she called aunt had traded her future for square footage and rooftop views. Olivia's answer only confirmed what I felt, but hadn't put into words. Raina didn't need to pay us back. She needed to sit with the cost. She needed to feel it in the silence between calls that didn't come, the invitations that never arrived, the kind of justice that comes not from punishment, but from realization. We didn't need to make her bleed. We just needed her to see herself clearly for the first time in years. So we pivoted. We built something more terrifying than a lawsuit. We built silence, the kind that seeps into cracks, drips behind walls, and echoes louder than shouting ever could. First, we froze her line of credit, legally, using a clause in the co-sign agreement she never thought I'd remember. It flagged suspicious access and triggered an auto hold. Her card stopped working on a Tuesday morning. Then came the condo board inquiry. We submitted an anonymous complaint, highlighting the undisclosed wire sources. It wasn't hard. Her penthouse was purchased through a trust that connected to a flagged foreign entity she probably didn't even know she used. Her mortgage wasn't canceled, but it became complicated. By Friday, I watched her Instagram story go from champagne flutes to herbal tea and silence. No captions, no selfies, just absence. Olivia caught it first. "She's spiraling," I nodded. We weren't trying to destroy her. We wanted her to feel the weight of what she stole, and to wonder what else was coming. We didn't fight fire with noise. We fought it with quiet precision, with restraint, with control. Each move we made was like chess, except Raina didn't know she was even playing. We planted a few seeds, casual mentions in old family group chats. Things like, "Hey, has Raina mentioned her new job title? I think it changed?" Or, "Wonder if she's still with that mortgage firm?" The questions festered. And soon, Raina started calling, not me, others, our cousin Lucy, my mother, even Olivia's old piano teacher. People started pulling back, not because they knew what she did, but because they felt something was off. Raina could sense it. Guilt is a poor companion. It whispers louder in the silence, and that's exactly what we wanted. That week, Olivia did something I didn't expect. She printed out the account statement, zero balance, all red, and mailed it to Raina's address. Nothing else in the envelope. No note, no return address. Just truth. Raw. Undeniable. I raised her well. That night, Raina called me. I didn't pick up. She called again. And again. I finally answered on the fifth call. Not with anger, not with fury. Just silence. She broke first. "Ray, I know what I did," she said. Her voice was cracked, unvarnished. I thought I deserved it. I didn't respond. She kept going. "You were always the strong one. I thought you'd bounce back." I didn't think Olivia would even notice. Those words cut deeper than any confession. I kept my tone level. She noticed Raina. She noticed everything. I hung up, and that was the moment I knew this wasn't over. It was only the beginning of what justice could really look like. 2 days after our silence campaign began, I placed a single envelope in the Irasai. Mail. No subpoena. No lawsuit threat. No lawyer's letterhead. Just a full-color printout of Olivia's drained college fund statement, clearly showing the withdrawal dates, Raina's digital signature, and the zero balance. I tucked it into a plain white envelope and included a single sentence, handwritten on heavy cardstock. "What you stole only had value to you." No name, no threat, no explanation, just fact. I didn't even track the envelope. I didn't have to. By the second evening, my phone rang. "Raina." I let it go to voicemail. She called again and again. On the fourth try, I picked up, still calm, still steady. Her voice cracked before she spoke. "Ray?" Silence. Then, softer, rushed. "If you report this, I'll lose everything. I let the words hang between us like a noose tightening. Then I answered, carefully, clearly. And Olivia? What did she lose, Raina? The silence on the line was deeper than any scream. I could hear her trying to breathe, hear the static of her guilt filling the space where truth had finally landed. She didn't respond. I didn't push. Instead, I sat back in my chair, looking out the window at the backyard Olivia and I had planted last summer, azaleas now fading into autumn red. And I remembered something I hadn't allowed myself to think of in years. Raina, at 15, shielding me with her body from a boy in the neighborhood who threw rocks at our window, her arms trembling, but planted like a wall between me and danger. She'd taken a bruise to the shoulder that day, and lied to Dad about falling off her bike. That girl, that version of Raina, would have rather gone hungry than let someone else feel pain. And now she had willingly stolen Olivia's future for a few marble countertops and a skyline view. I didn't say all that out loud. I didn't need to. Raina could feel it. I just thought, you wouldn't need it. You've always had backup plans. You always landed on your feet. I didn't think she'd... Her voice broke. I closed my eyes, let the ache pass through me like a current. She noticed, Raina, I said. She noticed everything. Another silence. I could hear her sniffling, whether from shame or fear, I couldn't tell. Maybe both. I'll fix it, she whispered. I'll move some things around, sell the car, maybe the place. That made me pause. I wanted to believe her. A piece of me did. But another piece, the part forged in desert winds and deployment silence, the part of me that had seen men lie with trembling hands and false medals, that part waited. Raina, I said, flat and final. You can't fix what you won't name. She didn't reply. I knew she wouldn't. So I ended the call, not with anger, not even with disappointment. Just a simple statement. I hope, someday, you realize who you became. Click, the line went dead. But I sat there a while longer, phone still in hand. There's a kind of grief funeral covers. The grief of surviving someone who's still alive. That night, Olivia crawled into bed beside me. No words, just warmth. Her head rested against my shoulder. She didn't ask what Raina said. She didn't need to. I turned off the bedside lamp and whispered, she knows now. Olivia didn't speak, but she reached for my hand under the covers and squeezed twice. It meant, we're okay. It meant, I'm safe. It meant, thank you for not yelling. Thank you for fighting differently, and for the first time since I landed back home, I let myself believe we'd won. Not in a courtroom, not with a bank reversal, but in a way that mattered more. We made Raina face herself, and that was justice enough. Raina started unraveling. Within days of our last call, she liquidated her minority shares in her boutique interior firm, pulled out of the investment group she'd been part of for 4 years, and listed the Penthouse on a private market app. Quiet desperation, cloaked under curated Instagram stories with cryptic captions like, "Sometimes family isn't blood," and "Rebuilding privately." I didn't reply. Not publicly, not privately. Because I was busy, with paperwork. The moment I realized she'd not only stolen, but knowingly impersonated a legal guardian to access funds, meant for a minor, I knew the leverage wasn't just moral, it was legal. And I had jurisdiction on my side. I wasn't after revenge. I was after consequence. I filed a confidential packet with the JAG office, Judge Advocate General, the military's legal division. Inside, notarized account ownership documents, date-logged transactions, matching Instagram purchase posts, and a statement of guardianship signed by my commanding officer before deployment. JAG had seen soldiers prosecuted for less, because this wasn't just fraud. It was breach of fiduciary duty against a dependent's interest, and it fell under both civil and federal review, due to cross-state digital banking and the military involvement. By the time I got a reply marked priority from the JAG legal analyst assigned, Raina's panic had gone live. Friends forwarded me her vague TikToks, cryptic rants about being set up, about people twisting the narrative, about haters who couldn't handle my glow-up. But there was fear in her cadence, tension in her eyes. The background? No longer her high-rise view. A neutral apartment wall. Meanwhile, Olivia stayed focused. She'd taken it upon herself to organize all the scholarship apps we'd planned to submit months from now. Just in case, she said. And watching her do that, with quiet fire, with no theatrics, I realized what we were building wasn't revenge, it was resilience. Before filing with JAG, I took a quiet walk to the base legal office. Major Linda Foster, a quiet, sharp JAG officer with 20 years in, looked over the documents slowly. She didn't rush. When she finished, she leaned back and asked me one thing. Do you want this to be criminal, Ray? Or just official? I paused, then said, I want her to feel the systems she took for granted. Major Foster nodded once and replied, then we'll start with asset preservation. Civil filings first. If she retaliates, we escalate. That same week, I received notification that our asset freeze request was under review for emergency enforcement. The fact that Reina had used a falsified co-guardian status to access funds during my international deployment triggered a unique clause designed to protect military families from financial predation. JAG would flag her to the Treasury Department. From there, IRS audit, credit flag, property freeze. I didn't smile, but I breathed easier. Until I got an email from an unknown address. Subject: You're ruining her. Body: She's your sister. She made a mistake. Do you really want to destroy her for a deposit slip? No signature, but I recognized the phrasing. Our cousin Melissa, always the family diplomat. The one who'd said at my divorce, maybe it's time to just let it go. I didn't reply. Instead, I printed it. Highlighted that phrase. She made a mistake. Then I wrote one line under it. Number: She made a decision. That printout went into the same folder as the bank logs, the IP trace, the affidavit. Not because I'd use it in court, but because I wanted to remember how deep the silence ran. How many people could see a mother's heartbreak and ask her to apologize for it. Later that night, Olivia and I sat on the back porch. She had a blanket over her legs and a laptop in her lap. She glanced at me and said, I know it's not about the money, Mom, but it feels like she didn't even think I was worth asking about. That stung more than I expected. I reached over, brushed her hair back gently. She didn't steal from you, Lev. She stole from who she thought you'd never become. Olivia nodded. Her eyes didn't water, but mine nearly did. It reminded me of a night, years ago, when Reina cried in my arms after her second failed startup. She'd sobbed into my shoulder, whispering, You're the strong one, Ray. You always were. Back then, I believed her. Now, I just believed in consequence. The next morning, I sat alone at the dining table, all documents laid out like a mission briefing. There, among them, I found an old drawing Olivia had once made. A stick figure of us holding hands in front of a college with a rainbow. I stared at it, longer than I meant to. It wasn't about revenge. It was about making sure that picture still had a future. And Reina? She'd drawn her own ending. The call came at 6:17 p.m. on a Wednesday. I recognized the voice before I even saw the name flash across my phone. Ray, it's Lucas. Lucas Taylor, retired Air Force, former Logistics Command. We'd worked together during 2 rotations in Al-Udeid. He didn't call unless it was important. She offered to manage part of our retirement fund, he said. Said she had an inside track on real estate flips. Clean money, high yield, sounded too polished. My stomach sank. Reina, I asked. Though I already knew, he confirmed. Yeah, and I just thought if she'd do something like that to you. I closed my eyes. You were right to call. He hesitated, then added quietly, What do you want me to do? Nothing, I said. Not yet. Because now it was bigger than us. I hung up and stared at my kitchen counter for a long moment. If Reina had approached Lucas, there was a pattern. This wasn't a one-time betrayal. It was a model, a cycle, maybe even a business. And suddenly I understood something Olivia had said the night before. She didn't steal from you, she leveraged you. That night, Olivia was curled up on the couch beside me, typing into a shared Google Doc we used for research. What are you working on? I asked gently. She didn't look up. Building a template. For what? She turned the screen. It was a draft of a whistleblower tip. Anonymous, clearly worded, specific. Suspected laundering through layered debt structures disguised as family-backed personal loans. It read, Underneath, 3 banks listed, 2 account types, 1 name, Raina Whitmore. I blinked. She told Aunt Jess she refinanced her condo, Olivia said. But I looked up the tax records. It's not in her name. It's in someone else's. That means she's using it as a collateral loop. It took me a moment to process. Who's the someone else? She tapped the screen. Dad. My ex-husband. I took a deep breath. Did he know? I don't think so, Olivia said. But he definitely didn't sign off. I didn't ask how she knew that. Instead, I said, "You want to send this?" She nodded once. Anonymous. No IP. Routed through Tor. Let the banks connect the dots. I stared at her, this 13-year-old who wasn't just surviving this. She was dissecting it. All right, I said. Send it. The report went to 3 institutions. The bank managing Raina's penthouse mortgage, the firm holding her investment trust, and the federal banking oversight channel designed for red flag fraud. The waiting began. I returned to work that week, quieter than usual. Every time my base commander passed me a case file on foreign fund transfers, I felt the bitter irony creep in. I'd spent years tracking fraudulent money across continents, and the most dangerous laundering was happening in my own bloodline. 2 weeks later, I received a notification on my personal email. No subject, no body, just a forwarded news alert link. Local businesswoman under investigation for financial irregularities. The picture wasn't flattering. Raina, looking over her shoulder, tight-lipped. Behind her, a courthouse step. No cuffs, not yet, but the tension was there. Below, the headline, the article, referenced unusual banking activity and use of third-party assets to secure high-risk personal loans. The bank, the article said, had preemptively frozen 2 of her accounts under their anti-money laundering policy. I didn't forward it to Olivia. She found it herself. Good, she said flatly. Then, after a pause, but it's not about ruining her. Right? I looked her in the eye. Number. It's about stopping her. She nodded. And keeping people safe from her. That night, I got another call. Unknown number, burned-in voice. Raina. Ray, what did you do? She whispered, sounding smaller than I'd ever heard. What I should have done months ago, I said. Everything's gone, she breathed. My lines of credit, my accounts, even the condo. It's not yours, I interrupted. She went silent. I didn't go public, I added. Not yet. Why? She asked. Because you're my sister, I replied. And because Olivia asked me not to. Her voice cracked. She asked for mercy? I swallowed hard. She asked for justice, I said. Mercy is mine to decide. There was nothing else to say. She hung up, and I stood in the dark kitchen, listening to the quiet click of the line going dead. It was one of those cold afternoons where the wind cuts sideways through the siding, and you can hear every creak in the bones of an old house. I was fixing the espresso machine on the counter. Nothing urgent, just a cracked seal in the pump valve. But something about tightening screws into place felt better than sitting still. Mechanical repairs were comforting. Unlike people, machines break for obvious reasons. Olivia sat across from me at the table, a steaming mug of chai in her hands. She was quiet for a while. I thought she was reading. Then she said, Mom, do you ever think you were wrong to give her that chance? I looked up from the machine. She didn't look angry, just thoughtful and a little tired. I wiped my hands on a cloth. You mean Raina? She nodded. I let the question sit between us for a moment. Then I answered slowly. I don't think it was wrong to give her the chance. I think the mistake was assuming she knew what to do with it. Olivia raised her eyebrows. So, trusting her wasn't the problem. I shook my head. Number trust isn't the problem. But teaching someone what that trust is worth, that's where I failed. She blinked. I added, it's not enough to believe in someone's sweetheart. You have to show them how to carry that belief. Otherwise, it's like handing someone a loaded weapon and hoping they won't shoot. She looked down at her mug. So it's our fault? No, I said firmly. Her choices are her own, but sometimes, when we love someone enough, we help build the road they take, even if it leads them away from us. She was silent again. Outside, the wind rattled the shutters. Then Olivia asked something that caught me off guard. Do you think we create the people who betray us? I set the screwdriver down. That's a heavy question. I know, I took a breath. Sometimes? Yes. Not because we're bad, but because we're scared. We overextend. We overgive. We make allowances we wouldn't make for anyone else. I looked at her. Because deep down, we're afraid of being alone. She didn't answer, but her lips pressed into a line. I stood and walked over, knelt beside her chair. I gave Raina that access because I didn't want to admit I had no one else to name. I was on deployment, and I couldn't name your father. I thought, Raina's blood. She wouldn't turn on us. Olivia looked at me then, her eyes soft but strong. But she did. I nodded. She did. Olivia reached out, her fingers resting over mine. She didn't just steal from you. She stole from both of us. I swallowed. Yes. But you never yelled, never broke things. You just responded. I gave a small smile. Because I knew who was watching. She blinked. There's always a child in the room, I said. Even if they're not speaking, even if they're just listening from the hallway. I paused. I've interrogated cartel accountants, cyber criminals, and fraud architects. But no one teaches you how to stay strong when your own sister lies with a smile. Olivia tilted her head. So, how did you stay strong? I answered without thinking. You. Her mouth parted slightly. I looked at you and remembered why I fought so hard to build this life. Not for money, not for medals, but for you to have a chance to dream. She swallowed hard. That's why I didn't destroy Raina, I added. Because if I'd gone after her with fire, you'd think fire was the answer. I stood again. But it's not, I said. Fire only leaves ash. We stood in silence for a while. Then she said something so quiet, I almost missed it. I'm glad you didn't become her. I turned and looked at her. I'm glad too. The call started slow. A cousin here, an aunt there. Familiar numbers I hadn't seen light up my screen in years. One voicemail said, Ray, she's your sister. Family doesn't drag family through the mud. Another one, sharper, handle it in-house. That's what decent people do. Some didn't bother being polite. You think exposing Raina helps anyone? This makes you look cold, like you're more soldier than sister. And maybe that was the point. But it wasn't the one they thought. I didn't answer any of them, didn't text back, didn't explain. Because I didn't owe them an explanation. Not anymore. One evening, a friend from base, Corey, called. He wasn't family, which meant he had the guts to be blunt. He skipped hello, just said, You really pressing charges against your own blood? I kept my voice level. I filed a civil fraud report. That's not pressing charges. That's protecting my child's financial future. He exhaled hard. Still, feels heavy. It is heavy, I said. But not heavier than watching Olivia lose trust in everyone she's ever known. There was a pause. Then, is it worth it? I didn't answer right away, because in the other room, I could hear the faint hum of our printer. Olivia was sitting cross-legged on the floor, carefully feeding pages through the tray. Application packets, scholarship essays, letters of recommendation. The whole mess of growing up, all in motion. And she was doing it. She wasn't giving up. I thought of what she said the night Raina's accounts were frozen. I don't want revenge. I want her to feel what it's like to lose something she thought was hers to control. I looked at the hallway, where the printer whirred and buzzed, steady and soft. Then I asked Corey, if I don't do this, what does Olivia learn from me? He didn't speak. I continued. That when someone steals your future, you smile and keep the peace. That silence is more important than justice. Still nothing. That being a good daughter means letting bad people keep winning. There was a click. He'd hung up. I stared at the phone. Outside, the streetlights buzzed on. The shadows in the room got longer, and the silence felt like it had weight. Eventually, Olivia walked in holding a stack of papers. Her face was calm, but her fingers curled a little tighter than usual around the edges. Can you review my essay? I reached for the top page. Of course. As I read, my throat tightened. The prompt was simple. Describe a moment that changed your life. She'd written about the college fund, but not about the money, about the moment she realized someone she loved could betray her, and the moment she realized her mother wouldn't let it slide. I used to think strength meant yelling back, she wrote. But then I saw my mother, quiet, precise, unshaken. And that's the kind of strength I want. I looked up. She was watching me. I said, "You wrote this?" She nodded. "Is that okay?" I swallowed. "It's more than okay." She hesitated, then added softly, "They're all mad at you, aren't they?" I nodded. She bit her lip. "Because of me?" "No," I said quickly. "Because of me. But I'm the reason you had to. You didn't make Raina steal. And you didn't make me act." She looked down. I stepped closer. "Olivia, listen to me. What Raina did, what the others say, it's not about you. It's about what people are comfortable ignoring. And you're not someone I will ever teach to ignore the truth." She nodded slowly, like she was tucking the words somewhere deep. Then she said, "Promise me something. Anything. If I ever mess up, I mean really mess up, will you still hold me accountable like this?" I blinked. "You want that?" She nodded again. "Because it means you believe I can do better." I smiled, pulled her into a hug. "Always." And in that moment, I knew. The hardest thing I ever did wasn't confronting Raina. It was staying soft enough for Olivia to still ask me questions, when the world kept telling her silence was easier. I didn't show up at the hearing, not in person. Not because I couldn't face Raina, but because I wanted her to face something else, the truth. In the quietest voice it could be told. Instead of testimony, I sent a letter. Not mine. It was handwritten in blue ink, folded carefully in a soft white envelope. At the top, it simply said, "To the woman who used to braid my hair when Mom was deployed." The attorney stood before the judge and asked permission to read it into the record. Raina sat, shoulders tight in her gray blazer. The attorney cleared his throat and began. "Dear Aunt, I will still go to college, not because we have money, but because I have my mom. She taught me that real dreams aren't built on someone else's money. I don't need a penthouse to feel worthy. I just need to remember, if someone ever takes something from me, I must never take it back by becoming like them. I don't hate you, but I hope you understand. Money can't replace memories. And what you took from me can't be returned. The feeling of safety, my trust in family, and the nights I should have slept in peace. I will still learn, and I will use this pain to do something better for others. Because my mom always says, we don't need to be loud to be strong. We just need to choose right." The courtroom was silent. No coughs, no shifting in seats, just stillness. I wasn't there to see it, but the lawyer told me later. When the final word was read, Raina lowered her head. And she wept. Not dramatically, not in a way to gain pity, just tears, like something had finally broken open. She didn't offer a rebuttal, didn't ask for leniency, didn't even speak. I don't know what she felt. Maybe shame, maybe regret, maybe just the hollow sound of her own conscience echoing in a place where my trust used to live. The judge granted our civil terms. She'd be legally restricted from managing or accessing any account held in another person's name for the next 10 years. Her license for fiduciary representation, suspended indefinitely. She was ordered to complete a course on financial ethics. It wasn't a prison sentence, but it was, in every sense, a reckoning. That night, Olivia came into my room. She curled up on the edge of my bed and asked, "Do you think she read it all the way through?" I nodded. She did. "Do you think she believed me?" I paused. "It doesn't matter," I said, "because I believed you, and you wrote the truth." Olivia smiled, not wide, just enough. Then she whispered, "Mom, I didn't write it to win. I wrote it because I didn't want to grow up like her." And in that moment, I knew. We hadn't just reclaimed a college fund. We'd reclaimed something far more valuable, our voice, our peace, our power, not with anger, not with revenge, but with something louder than all of that, with grace. I didn't go back to my old unit, not because I wasn't welcome, but because it was time to serve differently. I took a position as legal advisor for a veteran-led nonprofit, helping former service members trace financial fraud and rebuild what had been taken from them. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't high profile, but it mattered, deeply. Every day I sat with someone who had trusted the wrong person, a sibling, a spouse, a friend in uniform, and I listened, not to judge, not to fix, but to show them they weren't the only ones. I didn't want to chase more criminals. I wanted to restore something I had almost lost. The belief that protecting people isn't about fighting. It's about standing between them and what they don't yet know how to survive. Meanwhile, Olivia started something too. One evening over dinner, she said, "Mom, I've been thinking, what if there was a space, like a blog or something, where kids like me, military kids, could learn about protecting their accounts and futures?" I blinked. "And you want to be the one who builds it?" I asked. She nodded, her eyes fierce. So she did. She called it Guardians of the Future. She wrote posts in simple language, how to spot red flags in joint accounts, what to ask before letting someone co-sign anything, even how to talk to your parents if you suspect something's wrong. She didn't name Raina. She didn't talk about the court. She just shared what she'd learned, with honesty, vulnerability, and clarity. Within months, her blog started gaining traction. A small community formed. Other teens of deployed parents, young adults who had faced betrayal, even a few military financial counselors who began linking to her resources. One day, Olivia showed me a comment someone had left. "I thought I was dumb for trusting my cousin with my scholarship money. Your blog made me realize I'm not stupid. I was just unprotected." Thank you. She didn't cry. She didn't gloat. She just closed her laptop and said, "We don't build futures on stolen floors." That line stayed with me. We don't build futures on stolen floors. Because when we do, when we use something taken instead of something earned, we're laying the foundation on rot. And eventually, it caves in. I used to think justice was a gavel or a verdict. Now I know it's in the quiet rebuilding. In the days after, in what we teach the next generation through our own resilience. One afternoon, I received a letter with no return address. Inside was a short note. The handwriting was familiar. "I don't expect forgiveness, but I do want you to know I sold the Penthouse. The money was transferred into a fund for children of incarcerated veterans. It won't undo what I did, but maybe it can keep someone else from becoming like me." No signature, just the silence of a woman who finally realized her noise had caused too much damage. And maybe in that silence, she found something true. I didn't call, I didn't write back. But I did light a candle that night, not in her honor, not for reconciliation, but for release. Because when we let go of who someone could have been, we make room for who we need to become. And I needed to become a mother who could look her daughter in the eye and say, "We didn't win because we were smarter. We won because we stayed kind." It was a quiet Saturday. I was watering the lavender near the porch. Nothing special, just the kind of quiet you learn to treasure after a storm has passed. Then I heard a car pull up. Not fast, not hesitant, just there. I didn't turn around right away, not until I heard the steps. Slow, software familiar. Raina. She stood at the edge of the walkway, dressed in gray. No makeup, no jewelry. She wasn't crying, she wasn't shaking. She was just holding something. A small wooden box. She didn't speak at first, neither did I. Then she stepped closer and placed it on the porch rail. "It's the coffee grinder," she said quietly. "The old one. I left it behind when I moved out, 7 years ago, thought you might still want it." I glanced at the box but didn't reach for it. Didn't open it, didn't ask why now. We stood in silence for a few more seconds, long enough for the air to thicken with all the things neither of us would ever say. Finally, I spoke. "I forgive you, Raina," I said, "but I don't forget. And I don't open my door. Just because someone once lived here." She didn't flinch, didn't defend herself. She just nodded. Once. It wasn't a nod of understanding exactly. More like acceptance. She turned and walked back to her car. No big exit, no final word. Just the crunch of gravel under her shoes and the sound of a door closing behind her. I stayed there for a long time, looking at the box. I didn't bring it inside. Didn't toss it either. Just let it sit on the rail, under the shade of the porch, the way some memories do, too solid to ignore, too weightless to chase away. That night, Olivia asked if I was okay. I said, "Forgiveness isn't a clean cut. It's a slow healing. And sometimes, the scar still stings." She didn't press further. She didn't need to. She just sat next to me on the porch swing, both of us wrapped in a shared stillness. It wasn't closure, Not exactly, but it was enough. Later, before bed, I looked out the window. The box was still there. The stars were quiet above it. And I whispered, not to Reina, not to the past, but to myself. Some returns aren't meant for reunion, just recognition. Because sometimes people don't come back to be let in. They come back to see who you've become after the door was closed. And when they do, it's not your job to reopen the house. It's your right to guard the peace you built inside it. 1 year later, almost to the day, Olivia and I were reorganizing the living room. She was sorting books by subject. She liked things neat, even if her room told a different story. And I was going through old photo boxes, dusty edges, frayed corners, names written on the back in faded ink. That's when I found it. A picture I hadn't seen in years. It was the three of us, me, Olivia, and Reina, at a small county park just outside Cheyenne. We were sitting on a patchwork blanket. Reina had her arms slung behind her head like she owned the sky. Olivia was eating an orange popsicle. I was smiling, not the kind of smile you force, but the soft, unaware kind. The kind that doesn't know yet it's going to break. My first instinct was to put it aside, then maybe toss it out altogether. But Olivia looked up from her pile and saw it. Her voice was quiet when she said, "You don't have to keep it, Mom. But maybe you should." I looked at her. She was taller now, more sure of herself. Her voice carried weight now, not just words, but intention. I asked gently, "Why?" Olivia came over, took the photo from my hand, and held it under the light like it was something sacred. Not because Reina was in it, but because it captured a moment we all once shared. Before the silence, before the theft, before the terms trust and family had to be separated. She said, "Keep it." Not because she deserves to be remembered, but because it reminds me that we tried, that we forgave, even when it wasn't easy, even when it wasn't deserved. And someday, when I'm older, I'll need to remember that too. That forgiveness is something we give, not because people earn it, but because we refuse to carry their weight forever. I felt the air shift in the room, not heavy, not sad, just still. I placed the photo back into the frame, one that had been empty since the day Reina walked out, and set it on the bookshelf. Some might say that's weakness, keeping a reminder of someone who hurt us, but I don't see it that way. Forgiveness isn't forgetting. It isn't letting people back in. It's about reclaiming the space they once contaminated and saying, "You no longer define this." That picture didn't belong to Reina anymore. It belonged to Olivia, to me, to who we became after. That evening, as the light dimmed across the living room floor, Olivia handed me a cup of tea. We sat in silence for a while. Then she said, "She couldn't take this part, you know." I looked at her. This house, this peace, this bond. She stole money, time, trust, but she couldn't take the one thing that mattered most. Us. I smiled. She couldn't take your future either, I said. She only delayed it. But you rebuilt it with something she'll never have, Olivia nodded. Not proudly, not bitterly, just whole. That was the moment I knew. We hadn't just survived what happened. We'd grown roots around it. The story wasn't about a betrayal anymore. It was about what came after, what she couldn't take, what we refused to let go of. And as I looked again at that old photo, I didn't see loss anymore. I saw evidence. Evidence that even after all the breaking, we still knew how to hold on to what was real. Not to the person, but to the truth of who we are when no one's watching, when no one's taking, when it's just you. And the ones who stayed. That morning, the sky was soft and undecided, halfway between silver and blue. I brewed coffee using the old machine, the same one Reina left behind. The sound was uneven but warm, familiar in the way only time-worn things can be. I sat by the kitchen window, cradling the mug in both hands. Steam rose, silence settled. Then I opened Olivia's blog, Guardians of the Future. She had posted a new article. The title stopped me. What she stole wasn't mine. I clicked it. She wrote about the scholarship she'd just received, one she earned herself. About the day her counselor asked, "How did you stay focused with so much going on at home?" And how she almost answered, "Because I had no choice. But she didn't say that. She said, because I had a mother who believed pain wasn't a dead end, but a detour. A mother who taught me that even when trust is shattered, you don't stop teaching love, you just teach it with boundaries. There was a line near the end that took my breath. She took my money, not my mind. She took my future plans, not my purpose. And she took my trust, but not forever. Because I chose to rebuild that part, with better bricks. I set the mug down gently, then just sat there, not thinking about justice, not about betrayal, not about how many court filings or freeze orders or long nights we went through. Just one simple, unwavering truth. My daughter is still whole, and so am I. We weren't untouched, but we were unbroken. Raina couldn't take that. She couldn't take mornings like this, quiet, strong, grounded. She couldn't take the peace I feel when I see Olivia sit at the same table where we once cried. She couldn't take the bond we rebuilt, not over shared blood, but over shared rebuilding. She couldn't take the fact that we turned her theft into purpose, or that Olivia turned it into mentorship, and I turned it into service. That's the thing about thieves. They never see the value of what they can't hold in their hands. But love, resilience, integrity, they live in places no one can steal from. As the sun slid higher and the world outside began to stir, I found myself not grieving, not analyzing, not preparing, just present. And when Olivia walked into the kitchen, still in pajamas, hair a mess yawning mid-step, I handed her the mug I had just poured. She smiled, sleepy but bright. And I said, she stole the account. But not the future, not this. Olivia raised the mug in a mock toast. To starting over, she said. And I smiled back. To starting wiser. Before we say goodbye, we'd love to know, where are you watching from? Is it a quiet morning with a warm cup of coffee? Or a late night where stories like this keep you company? Let us know in the comments. We read everyone with gratitude. And if this story touched your heart, please consider subscribing to the channel. Not just to hear more stories like this, but to be part of a community that still believes in kindness, healing, and second chances. Thank you for spending your time with us today. Wherever you are, we hope you carry this story with you. And remember, sometimes the miracle doesn't knock on your door. It waits quietly until you're ready to open your heart. Take care, and we'll see you in the next story.